Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Roosevelt Lyons. I am the Deputy Director at Kansas City Parks and Recreation. Thanks for joining our meeting tonight. I believe we're still letting people in the lobby. We'll give it just about 30 seconds and then we'll jump right into our agenda. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. My name is Roosevelt Lyons. Again, just if anybody's coming in, I am the Deputy Director of Operations for Kansas City Parks and Recreation. Tonight is our third meeting to discuss how to honor Dr. King. So this is both a live and a virtual event. So we have a number of people in the audience. We'll introduce everybody in a second, but first I do want to recognize President Jack Holland. He is the president of our Board of Parks and Recreation Commissioners. And I just want to turn it over to him for just a couple minutes so he can do a quick introduction.
Thank you, Director Lyons. I appreciate everybody who's participating in this meeting tonight. This is an important discussion, one we've been having for some time and one that the current Parks Board welcomes to a great degree. I'd also like to welcome Mark McHenry, past Director of the Parks Department, who did a fabulous job for many years. And thanks, Mark, for being here tonight. So
you're welcome.
I would encourage everyone to participate with great vigor, and I'll turn it back to Director Lyons. Thank you.
Thank you, President Holland. Give me a promotion there, Deputy Director. We do have the director here, Terry Reiner, here's in the audience. So she's not quite ready to go yet, so she's gonna defer to her. All right, well, thank you everybody again for joining us. I know you guys have a lot of things to do this evening. The weather is beautiful, so I really appreciate everybody jumping on and tuning into this important conversation. As I said, this is our third public meeting, public virtual meeting to discuss the honoring of Dr. King. So that's our purpose tonight, and I'm going to walk through the agenda real quick. So you should see on my screen today's agenda. So I have a few staff members that are on the call today. Who are going to help us through this agenda. We will wrap up. Maybe we get done before 8 o'clock. We'll see. I don't want to stop anybody's discussion, but we'll get you on definitely at 8 o'clock and no later. Just for a couple introductions, I do have a few staff members that are going to be helping us facilitate some conversation. Glenn North, who's our administrative officer over at Bruce R. Watkins Cultural Heritage Center. Kelly Jander, our resident engagement officer. Julie Steenson, our financial manager. Doug Schrader, who is all things awesome. That's his official title. And then Esther Swanson, special projects manager for the director's office. So these are our table facilitators. They're going to be helping us. You'll see in a little bit that we're going to break out into some small groups, have some discussion, and they're going to help you through that discussion. We'll do the same thing here in our live audience, and I'll be helping everybody through that discussion as well. So really their job is to listen, make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak and be heard, to kind of document what's being said and also to report that out. So that's what they're there for. Our goal here is really to encourage conversation amongst residents, amongst neighbors. We often say this is not something as staff and as commissioners, our job is to oversee these assets, but they really belong to the people. So we feel like when we start talking about naming and renaming and honoring, this is really a decision that should be made by the people like yourselves. So the goal here is to actually have conversation amongst yourselves, because you guys are the actual decision makers, and we listen to that and take that into account. Real quick, so I'll walk through this agenda real quick. So in a minute, we'll do our check-in and introduction. We'll set some ground rules for our discussion. I'll talk about format, kind of what this looks like tonight. We'll do I'll just have a few slides on how do we get here. There's been a lot of work done on how to honor Dr. King, his naming and renaming. So I'll talk through that and give you some information to kind of digest. Then I'll just open it up real quickly for questions. So at that point, we'll open it up to the audience. If you guys have any questions, you can unmute yourself and feel free to chime in there. And then after that, we're going to break out into small group discussion, which should take about 20 to 30 minutes, depending on our group sizes. That's where your table facilitators or myself, if you're here in person, are going to lead some discussion. We have some questions and some prompts we'll talk about, but really we want this to be a free-flowing conversation and organic. So again, our job is just to kind of help facilitate the conversation, listen, document what you say, and then report that out. And then after that, 20 to 30 minutes, we'll reconvene the large group and then we'll report out, and then we'll talk about next steps and then also dismissal. So that's our agenda for today. And kind of what we're going to go through. So first, I do want to do some quick introductions. And so I just want you to tell me a couple things. Tell me your name, what part of the city you're from, and then why you're joining us. Again, this is going to be brief. If you're not speaking, please keep your microphone on mute so we can cut back any feedback. For those who are here in the building, as you came in, the restrooms are right back the way you came, and to the left. So if you need a bathroom break, that's where they are. For those of you who are virtual, I'm sure you know where the facilities are. So I trust that you know that. So with that, I am going to start with our virtual attendees and do some introductions. So I'll just walk through my list here, call your name, tell us about yourself, where you're from, and then also kind of why you joined us. So I'm just gonna go down my list as I see it. So Brad Johnson.
Yep, I'm a lifetime KC resident, just here to listen in and just here to listen.
All right, you're a little muffled there, Brad, but I think we heard you're here to listen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Mr. Woolfolk, how you doing?
How you doing, Roosevelt?
Doing well.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm Kevin Woolfolk, and I am Director of Membership Engagement and Activism with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference of Greater Kansas City. And I am a resident of Kansas City, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Melvin Brown.
Yes, this is Melvin Brown from Kansas City Public Schools, and I am the Family and Community Engagement Specialist at Paseo Academy of Fine and Performing Arts.
Awesome, thanks for joining us. Kansas City Public Schools is in the house. I did not introduce John Hildebrand, but he is the man behind the curtain. He's our IT guy who's going to be working all the magic to make this happen. So lots of wizardry back there. Peg Eckerd.
Hi, I am a resident of the city of Kansas City. I'm a former pastoral associate at Visitation Catholic Church. I chair a nascent racial justice committee at the parish, and I just care about this topic.
Awesome, glad you can join us.
Thank you.
Mr. Lloyd Fields. Mr. Fields. If you're talking, you're on mute. I'll keep it moving. And if you want to raise your hand or unmute yourself at any point, just feel free to do so. Bella Dang.
Hello, everyone. I'm a college student and at UMKC, and I want to join this event to support my class. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Ms. Dang. Thank you for joining us. UMKC, go Roos. That's my alma mater. Miss Brianna Campbell.
Hello, I'm also a senior at UMKC studying urban planning and design, and currently an intern for the Center for Neighborhoods. So I'm just here to listen.
Awesome, thank you. Bringing it back, Ms. Gail Hill, Suber.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gail Hill Suber, a lifelong resident of Kansas City, Missouri, a retired school teacher. I taught predominantly in the Kansas City School District. I am a board member of the Bruce R. Watkins Cultural Heritage Center. I am a board member of the Spirit of Freedom Fountain. I am a member of SCLC. I'm a member of the NAACP. I'm a member of the Urban Summit, and it's time to get this done.
Amen, Gail.
And I got Sarah Bennel. I can't see the rest of the name. Sarah.
Hi, yes, I'm Sarah Bennel. I am the outreach coordinator with Heartland Conservation Alliance. And I live in sort of the Waldo area, and I'm mostly here to listen. I haven't been able to attend the other sessions, so I'm excited to hear what y'all have to say.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. I got a Luke. Just Luke.
Hey, how's it going? I am a current resident on a portion of Swope Parkway that is being discussed when it comes to the name change to MLK Boulevard. So I am very interested and excited to listen to the opinions of the public, and hopefully we can see a name change coming up here.
Thank you for joining us. And then Luke X Martin. Two Lukes, one room.
Hello, I'm a reporter at KCUR 89.3, and I am here working.
Nice. Hope you get paid by the hour. W. Chambers.
Yes, I'm a resident of Kansas City, and I'm interested in the conversation. I will be listening.
Awesome. Ms. Pat Lasowitz, long time no see. Former Parks. Oh, maybe she's shy. Hey, well, I will come back. Mr. Carl Stafford.
Hey, hello. Carl Stafford, maybe we all be doing well.
Thanks for joining us. See, I got one person Zoom user. That is a unique name. I like it. Somebody Zoom user, want to introduce yourself? Or not? It's cool. Tim Sweeney. Mr. Tim Sweeney. You're talking, you're on me. Up, I see. Tim put his bio over here in the sidebar. Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Thanks for joining us. And I think I saw Dr. Jacob Wagner, the Dr. Jacob Wagner. If you guys didn't know, Dr. Wagner.
Good evening. Jacob Wagner from UMKC Department of Architecture. I'm here because Kelly Jander told me I'd be in trouble if I didn't show up. Thanks.
Yeah, it's always a good idea to show up if Ms. Kelly tells you to. So smart move on your part. All right, well, awesome. And then we have some people here in the audience. We're going to pass the microphone around. Feel free to introduce yourself if you would like.
Pardon me, please. Lloyd Fields, pastor of Grady Gilgal Baptist Church, member of NAACP, lifelong citizen of Kansas City. Just want to see what's going on and support the movement to rename the street area for Dr. King.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Fields.
Okay, I'm Janet Moss Awaken, and I'm retired from a 30-plus year history of workshops and activities to heal race relations in Kansas City. And I'm here as a citizen very concerned about this issue.
Thank you.
Joel Awaken, and yeah, I'm here mostly to listen, but also to ask a single question. Are you going to put money into that east side of that road?
That's a really good question. Maybe the quick answer is yes, but we'll make sure we address that in the whole group. Mr. Weber?
Good evening, I'm Daniel Weber, the registrar for the Kansas City Parks and Recreation Department. Not actually assigned to this project, but I'm interested in the way to hear what's being said about it. To offer ADA advice as it progresses.
My name is Gerald Walker. I'm a resident of Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm glad to be here. And every city I go to, I travel a lot. Before the pandemic, every city I go to, I get tired of people saying, you live in that big city and they don't have Martin Luther King Boulevard, and he's been dead for over 50 years. And so I like to see a Martin Luther King Boulevard somewhere around here. I know they have them in small cities, and my friends from St. Louis said, we've been having the Martin Luther King Boulevard here since '77. So I hope this be successful.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Good evening. My name is Gerald Clark. I'm a 7th Ward committee man, also lifetime member of Kansas City. My reason for being here is also just to learn about what's going on in our community. If I have any input, my time I'll be able to share some things. So my reason for being here is really to learn and see what's going on.
Thanks, Mr. Clark.
Citizen in the 64130 area. I am concerned about the naming and the location of this team.
Thank you, Mrs. Fowl. Since my boss is here, Beck, do you want to introduce yourself? Terry.
Sure. Terry Reiner, Parks and Recreation Director. Thank you all so much for taking time. As Roosevelt said, it's great outside. We're sitting here in Southeast and there's about 200 people playing basketball. So I know you have a lot of great options. Glad you're here this evening with us.
Thank you. And I just see a couple people joined. Mr. Gordillo. Would like to introduce yourself? I see one phone user. Oh, and then I think I missed Mark McHenry. I don't know how I missed Mark McHenry. Mark, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Roosevelt, and thank you, Roosevelt and Terry and President Holland for taking the lead on this and moving the ball forward and continuing this conversation, and applaud you for your efforts. And I believe I'll be making a few comments here a little later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And then I see Pat Lotzowitz put something in the sidebar. Said, sorry to be silent. My computer doesn't have a microphone. It's okay. All right. So as I discussed, we talked about the format a little bit, but what we're going to do here in a little bit, after I give you just a bit of a brief history, is we're going to break out into small groups. You're going to have a table facilitator. They're going to walk through some discussion. It's completely open, and we're going to, those table facilitators are going to document that. Kind of what you said, and then at the end of it all, we're going to reconvene and report back. So it's very informal. This is not, you know, your traditional stand at the microphone and kind of yell at the public administrator. This is a conversation with our neighbors, and so I would hope that everybody treats each other like neighbors today, because that's what we are here. So I do want to share some ground rules real quick that I would like us all to agree to follow. And if I'm missing anything in these ground rules, please feel free to throw something in the sidebar. If you think something we should be following while we're doing this, but I feel like ground rules kind of help us all get in the right, set our intentions, get in the right space. So, so one of the things, one of the top ones, whenever we have these discussions is giving people grace and assuming good intentions. I think sometimes when we disagree on something, it's very easy to make assumptions about other people's motivations and their intentions. In order to have a productive conversation, it's best that we all come at this assuming that everybody here has good intentions. So we're going to give each other some grace. Sometimes we're going to say something wrong. Sometimes we're going to say something that makes you upset, and that is okay. It's totally up to you how you deal with that, but I would hope that we all, again, treat each other like neighbors. I'll say share the air. That's just a way of saying step up or step back. So if you're a person that tends to dominate the conversation, please make space for others to chime in and to contribute. If you are an introvert, much like myself, and you're kind of quiet and reserved, I would encourage you to step up because you do have something to say. We want to hear. I see that we have some students on the call today, so I'm excited to hear that. So I'm really excited to hear from some of you. And if you don't feel comfortable speaking in person, feel free to throw something in the chat bar and we'll make sure we take note of it. Everybody's ideas here are valid. There's no wrong answers. If there was a wrong answer here, this would be an easy thing. So if there's a right answer for everything, this would be easy. This is the conversation. Try to listen to understand. Oftentimes when we start talking, we're just waiting to get our point in and our counterpoint. So I'm going to ask everybody just to listen with the intention of actually understanding what the other person is saying if there's a disagreement. We have a few people in the room, so be direct, concise, and intentional with your words. Share your perspective. It is unique. Share your experiences. It's unique. but don't share other people's. Don't feel like you have to make assumptions about other people. Sometimes I get in these conversations and people say, well, you just think that way because of so-and-so. I would prefer it if we didn't do that. Let's make sure we're speaking for ourselves, from our own perspective. Speak honestly, and of course, use I statements. We learned that a long time ago. So if we can agree with that, if there's anything else that I missed on here that anybody wants to throw out there, put it in the sidebar, we'll make note of that. But I think those are some of the ground rules we'll just set. If anybody has a problem, now is the time to speak. Yes, he's actually one of our staff members here. So he's also one of our tech gurus here to help us. Would you like to introduce yourself? Sure.
Michael Finder, IT General Services, technical support.
Pat, you might as well introduce yourself as well.
Pat Herder, IT Manager for Parks and Recreation.
Awesome. All right, well, thanks everybody for introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about yourself. So I'm gonna open up a slide here and we're just gonna talk a little bit about how we get here. I'm gonna give you the 50,000 foot view, if you will. And then we'll kind of get into our, we'll have an opportunity to answer questions, and then we'll get into our discussion group. So how do we get here? There's been a lot of discussion on this. So I'm just gonna give you kind of a brief timeline, and I won't talk through all of these items, but you can read them for yourself, obviously. So this conversation, well, I'm sure it started long before that, formally, back in January of 2016, the Parks Board received a letter from Congressman Cleaver regarding his meeting with several clergy members who had the desire to rename the Paseo to honor Dr. King. That was kind of the first formal type of action that was kind of taken on this. And then we get up to October of 2016, where the department received a letter concerning a recent meeting. So this is actually the formal letter that goes into the file, gets documented for our Parks Board and Park staff. I'm going to skip ahead to March 2018, where the Parks Board responded to that letter to advocate for highlighting the board decision. So in that letter, the board said, we would like to continue this conversation, but they're in support of retaining the name, the Paseo at that time. But one of the things the Parks Board did say is it would like to continue having this conversation. They felt there was a much broader conversation and deeper conversation to be had. So that was a request from the Parks Board. I'm going to forward to 2018, April 2018, where Mayor Sly James announced the formation of the MLK Advisory Committee. And this advisory committee we'll talk about in just a second, but it wrapped up its work in June of 2018. And we'll talk a little bit about that advisory committee and its function and its role and some of its recommendations. So as I said, it was established April of 2018. Its purpose at the time was to seek input from the community and provide recommendations for MLK junior designation. There were a number of public meetings throughout the city at the time. And through those public meetings, there came 3 top recommendations. One was to rename the new airport terminal to honor Dr. King. Another was to rename 63rd Street Dr. King to honor Dr. King. And the last was, I think I am. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you guys see my screen on the, you should be seeing a slide. Is anybody not seeing that because it's showing that it's sharing?
I can't see it, Roosevelt. I see you, but I can't see anything else.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing and then reshare again. Oh, wrong one. Hold on. IT fix coming through. All right, how about now? Awesome, sorry about that. So if anybody wants to see these slides, I can always email them out to everybody. Sorry about that. A little, you know, we're still working the bugs out here. But as I was saying, the three top recommendations were renaming the new airport terminal to honor Dr. King, 63rd Street, and then the Paseo. Next slide. Okay. Sorry, guys. Let me try one more thing. I did, it's stuck. The IT guys say, turn it off and turn it on again. Universal fix. Sure. There we go. So in August of 2018, City Council accepted the recommendations from the MLK Advisory Group and declared the council's intent to select one of those recommendations. So again, that was August 23rd, 2018. From there was an ordinance that was introduced in October of 2019, officially recommending the name change from the Paseo Boulevard to Dr. King. And then in January of 2020, most of you remember that ordinance was actually passed. And if you ever want to look it up in your board tonight, 180-828 is that number. And then if you all recall, in November of 20, residents voted to return the name back to the Paseo Boulevard, which is currently where we are now. So from there, Mayor Lucas back in the fall, I believe around November, asked the Parks Board to gather further input, which is why we're all here today. So we started that process, and we started that planning process, and then we got sidetracked by a little thing called COVID. So this is us kind of returning back to that process of gathering that input. So it's been going. We're just trying to pick that up and continue it. At that time, the mayor also created an email address for individuals to register their opinions on the renaming of Dr. King. That was up for 90 days. There are 482 different suggestions submitted. A lot of the suggestions fell into the streets, parks, and fountain kind of category, as well as the airport. And some of the top suggestions from that email were, of course, the airport terminal, 63rd Street, renaming Mill Creek Parkway Fountain, which was formerly the Nichols Fountain, and then also Truth was the top vote getter. There was a lot of individual suggestions, but these were some of the top ones. So some recent actions that our Parks Board have taken are removal of the Nichols name from the Parkway at Mill Creek Park, and also from the fountain. This was because, as documented, J.C. Nichols participated and really kind of promoted a lot of policies to promote segregation in our city, things like redlining, and also racial covenants for neighborhoods. So the Park Board, Commissioner Good actually in June made a formal request to rename the Nichols Fountain Parkway. At that time, we had 2 public meetings held in partnership with the Kansas City Public Library. I'm sure some of you were there. And then on June 30th, the Parks Board voted unanimously to remove the name J.C. Nichols. So right now, there is a current proposal that is on, that the Parks Board is considering. While we're talking about that proposal, I'll obviously talk about that proposal today, but the idea here is also to continue the conversation and continue the dialogue. So the current proposal suggests naming portions of 350 Highway, Swope, and Boker to honor Dr. King. How we got there is park staff actually met with members of SCLC, including Mr. Woolfolk there. We identified some key criteria, for honoring Dr. King. Some of those included major quantities of mile, assured direct exposure to Black lives, and then also within the Central City Economic Development boundaries. And last, it was a boulevard. So SCLC submits their formal letter on August 20. Parks Board hearing on September 5th. The Parks Board heard that on September 15th, and that proposal is still currently underway. So that gets us to where we are currently. That is the end of that presentation. I'm going to attempt to stop sharing that and hope I don't break anything. And I'm going to open it up for any questions at this point. You can unmute yourself. If there's anybody in the audience who has a question, yes, sir. Okay. I'm going to give you your name one more time and then go ahead and hand the microphone.
I had just signed up to have a time to do that.
We're going to break into some small groups and discuss, but if you have a question or a comment, feel free to go ahead and give it. No. Okay, awesome. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Comments, concerns before you go into the virtual breakout room?
Can I just ask?
Yes.
I saw the criteria, but can you tell me some of the reasons why the staff has selected that area where they think it's important?
Sure. So in our discussions, originally, members of SCLC, those were actually their criteria that they listed. What we did was we as staff went back and looked at how many of our boulevards met those criteria. And we came up with a really short list of some of those options. And we as staff also felt like that Walker slow piece was actually a good option there. So we came up with some options, we gave those, and that's kind of the one that we picked.
Thank you.
And yes, it also abuts MLK Park, if you're not familiar with that as well. So it seemed like a good fit, which if you're not familiar with that park also, a lot of improvements going on there. We have the Mahomes Foundation putting in $1 million playground. So it just seemed like we had a lot of synergy at that location right now. It's bad.
I'm a little confused because I thought that, I mean, I signed up to speak, but is it better if we speak in this small group or would I speak to this group?
I would, now's the time for questions, but it'd be great if you did in a small group with everybody else, would be my preference.
Okay, I guess a question then is, we drove that route today. Does that route go clear to like where 435 is?
Yes.
You said it's Blue Park.
It does. It goes clear there, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so my question is that last area is so full of trash and everything that I would hate for someone to come from that angle entering our city on Dr. King Parkway. And it looks nice going out, but that's a real concern that I have.
Yeah, thank you very much, this is Terry again. I will address that just a little bit. So the park board only has jurisdiction to Elmwood. So on Blue Parkway, Elmwood, which is where the Sonic is, if that's a benchmark for anyone, all the way to Maine, Brookside, is the length, the stretch. We originally had said all the way to 55th Street, which would include the area you're talking about. That is actually Public Works jurisdiction, and we agree a lot of work would need to be done before we would want to extend past Elmwood at this point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it's still there.
Oh, yeah.
It's still going to stay there. It's not
Yeah.
anymore. Will it be marked from Elmwood on east? Will it be marked Martin Luther King Boulevard?
Not until the city council and Public Works would take that through the city naming policy, which is different than the park board naming policy. But I totally agree. Actually, we drove down there the other day and had the same concerns. I think we're going to focus on Maine to Elmwood with the intention of continuing on and doing some improvements along that stretch. It doesn't have a boulevard feel for sure. There's some junkyards and some things that aren't even that don't meet the Boulevard Parkway standards. So that's probably the next conversation to have. But I agree with you.
Yeah, well, when the relaxed end is the nicest building around, there's a problem.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions before we break out into our groups? All right, so if there's no other questions, we're going to break out into some small groups. Everybody that's here, we're going to meet back at those back tables with some social distancing and masks on. But everybody else online, they're going to break you out. You're going to be in there with one of our staff members. And John is going to work his magic, and I will see you all back here in about 20 to 30 minutes. Mark, did you want to say anything? You want me to give you the last word?
Well, just to kind of, my first question, and I think Esther's taken some notes from our breakout session. And I think, are you going to are folks going to report out now? Or are you just going to take all the comments, or how does this go forward here?
Yeah, we'll do each group will do a quick report out.
Okay. Well, I'll let Esther report out from the group I was with her on, and I think she'll do a good job of covering it. If there's something I think she may have skipped because we talked kind of fast, then I'll tag on at that point, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
A lot of faith in Esther. All right, are we all back? Yes, everybody made it back. We're just joking about people getting lost in the upside down. So you never know with these breakout rooms. So thanks everybody. Thanks table facilitators. Thanks everybody. I know it's we're getting late, but we're wrapping up here. So we're just going to take about 5 minutes per group just to do a quick report out. We'll hit the highlights and then we'll wrap it up for the evening. So since I have the microphone, I'll just go ahead and go first. We had a lot of good discussion, not just about the current piece of street that's under proposal, but some additional comments, including things like 47th Street, things like 63rd Street. There was a lot of conversation about ensuring that the stretch of road stretches the entire length of the city, goes through both what people would think of as those neighborhoods that are underserved, as well as some of the nicer neighborhoods, all the way up to State Line as well. There was conversation about Mill Creek Park and possibly naming or renaming some of that to honor Dr. King as well. There was definitely a kind of an all of the above comment about can we name everything, including the airport. And I think that the general sentiment there is, why stop there? This is a very important individual, and everybody should be exposed to that. With some general comments from the group. Yeah, we had a lot of some discussion about the current proposal and some of the work that needs to be done along that stretch of road. So including some improvements the Parks Department is putting in there. We had some discussion about kind of the cultural corridor going from kind of the Freedom Fountain stretching all the way up to what is now MLK Park with a paseo. A lot of good suggestions and just ways to honor Dr. King. Did I miss anything? Anything at all there? All right, that was my group. A lot of good comments, and thank you all for your feedback and help with that. I am going to call on Doug. Oh, yeah, Doug, great.
We had a great discussion tonight, our group did, and there were several things discussed. Just to get off the ground here, I think everybody pretty much supported naming the current street or the current parkway after Dr. King. There was some concern, though, voiced with the shortening of the route, even though we discussed the reasoning. The full 5 miles, which I think is what it would be, all the way to 435, is still preferred for some of the members in our breakout group. So they are in support of that, but we discussed other ways of enhancing city amenities, the parks, whatever, to support Dr. King and honor him. And I think the one thing that we talked about was creating longer term processes to increase environmental awareness through programming the park. That's something to think about. I think the overarching thought behind this was that the street is a nice thing to do, but we should think bigger than that and larger than that. And we should think about things that not only that honor Dr. King, but also have affect the community, support the neighborhood, both like financially, you know, find things that can increase development and revenue sources in areas that have been affected by systemic racism. So be more aware of the economic impacts that that honoring things that Dr. King would bring about. Something else we talked about was that and I think I mentioned this a little earlier, that we should think way more than just a street. I think that was an overarching theme that continued going throughout our discussions. We talked about there are several facilities in the city that have been named after Dr. King that have been abandoned. And maybe we should think about grabbing those facilities and repurposing them into like multi-use facilities, things that can help the community, help the neighborhoods. There was some discussions about involving the neighborhoods to a greater degree, increasing the conversations, the communications, so that people are more aware. So just doing more work. We did discuss the Culid neighborhood, Culid district that Parks has started out focusing on the 6 LifeX zip codes. And that was a nice discussion, but we also discussed the ULI report and there was discussion that we should embrace that report with, especially as it addressed equity in the city. Now I'm gonna let anybody else that was in the group fill in anything that I missed.
All right, thanks, Doug. That was a lot of good conversation. Like a lot of good conversation there. So thanks for that. And thanks everybody that was in Doug's group. I'm going to kick it over to Glenn North.
Okay, so we had a great discussion as well. We talked about why it is so important for us to honor Dr. King. And some of the comments were that what we name our streets and our memorials give us opportunities to help other people understand the culture of our city and the history of our city. Because Dr. King was a prophet and he sacrificed his life, and it doesn't make sense that we haven't named a street after him up to this point. It's long overdue. His sacrifice was about equity and inclusion. And that also, as we move forward with these ideas about how we honor his legacy, there's also the conversation that needs to take place about the iconography of the Confederacy and other institutions or people who engaged in dehumanizing behavior and how that should be addressed. More so than the Volker, Blue Parkway, Soul Parkway corridor, folks in our group thought that 63rd Street would be a much better street to rename, in that it connects people from diverse backgrounds, and that's what Dr. King was really advocating for. And then to kind of echo Doug, we did get into a conversation about what do we do above and beyond naming to honor Dr. King's legacy. So we talked about curriculum. We talked, something that would really engage young people in a meaningful way. We talked about working with organizations like the Sclc to figure out ways that we could walk along with them and do things that would move us toward social justice. One young lady who had to leave early talked about connecting some of the activities to, I guess, holidays, or for lack of a better way to put it, that already exist. So for instance, there could be like a Dr. King effort that took place on Earth Day because he was also interested in environmental justice. And I told her I wanted to hook her up with you, Carl, and my region wins with some of the ideas that you've been talking about, but she had to go to another meeting. But Carl is very much interested in how we can make changes in the environment along with honoring Dr. King as well. Also, it might be a good idea in terms of these things that we're doing above and beyond the renaming is to, during the civil rights movement, protests were very organized. There was an infrastructure for, how to deal with the police, how to respond if protesters were treated violently. It was viewed from a spiritual perspective. There was a lot of fasting and prayer. And so I wasn't in sync or in tune with, in terms of the folks who were organizing the protests that took place this summer. But in terms of how Dr. King and the folks that he worked with, looking at that and trying to equip young people who are still interested in being on the front lines, helping them to understand how to organize and mobilize in ways that are productive. And then finally, to use this momentum to definitely honor Dr. King and his legacy, but to also think about overlooked African Americans here in Kansas City who were either a part of the civil rights movement or who helped to shape the city in some way, so that we are also honoring those local figures who we've overlooked for so long. And at this point, if anybody else had anything to add or that I left out, I welcome the support. I think I covered it though.
Great job, Glenn. Sounds like you guys had a lot of good conversation there. Glenn, are you still in your office?
I am.
You don't get paid by the hour.
I know.
Thank you, Glenn. Julie Stevens.
All right, so my group, a lot of the points that have been made and were echoed in my group. A few things that were specifically mentioned, not sure, a participant in my group said that she wasn't sure that the community has truly had an opportunity to weigh in on the proposed route, and just where that it is and where it could be. And, I know we're here to discuss this one segment, but that was some feedback she had, not feeling like everyone was given a chance to voice, what alternatives might be. Kind of akin to that, a great conversation around how much the location matters and how it needs to be seen, both by the people that live near and around the route, but also everyone coming to Kansas City to visit. And this route that is proposed in particular has a lot of benefits because some of our most cherished educational and cultural institutions, whether it's UMKC, Paseo High School, just the MLK Park and the things that are happening there. This street will connect all of those. And so there's a lot of meaning around that. There is some meaning as well that the route is going to terminus at Main and not run through the plaza. And so that was definitely a note that I thought was worth mentioning. We had a little conversation about, what that would mean at Mill Creek Park. And, it sounds like some other groups had that conversation as well, but I thought that was a very poignant point. What could we do so that it wasn't symbolic that, hey, we're putting a stop sign on this route, as that has been done so much in our history in Kansas City. And then also, we spent a lot of time talking about the upkeep and cleanliness of this route, that if we're going to honor Dr. King, we need to honor him with cleanliness, with no junk and disheveled businesses along that route, especially that area as you come off of 435, which I would assume a lot of folks coming to visit our city are coming down the street from that direction. And so making sure that the street itself is kept up, businesses, and then Brush Creek itself, and the way that it looks as sort of that basin and a collection point for junk in as it moves eastward. So making sure that if we're going to honor Dr. King, we do it with something that is clean and pristine and worthy of his name.
Thank you, Julie. A lot of support in this room as well. We had some of those conversations. Thank you so much. And Kelly.
So we had a great conversation. We only had a couple of people who were part of the conversation. The others were listening. It was interesting because one of the people in my room was Kevin Woolfolk with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And we opened with him explaining what this process has been like for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in proposing a name change for a street, and that it has been a long time in the making. One of the people in our room who was willing to speak discussed how he before was opposed to the name to the naming of the Paseo in the past, but based on his conversation with Kevin Woolfolk, realized that he would have been in support of Paseo being renamed had he had that conversation with him before the last go round. So I just want to point out how important it is for us to continue having conversations like these around so many topics in our community. And so the more that we can do that, the better off we will be. But also because I don't want to speak on behalf of Kevin, because it was primarily a conversation with him, I'd like to let him report out just a little bit more on how the SCLC got to this point and why we're where we are in this conversation. Kevin?
Thank you, Kelly and Roosevelt. You know, I can get on my soapbox I mentioned this the last time about this issue. But basically it just came down to why do we want to do this in SCLC? Well, we've been wanting this throughout the existence of our organization, which is 50 years. Now, because of the national embarrassment of pulling our founder's name off that street in 2019, there's a lot more attention to this issue, of course, now than it has been over the past 50 years. But it's been many, many attempts throughout our existence to try to get Dr. King on a street. That's what we want. We want his name on a street. So it's not to say that it's the best idea or it's a best idea. As I mentioned to our room, we're not often to absolute relative superlatives when we talk about how to honor our founder. And I let them know that the best way, if you're going to do it, or a best way to honor him, is to honor him as many ways as you can. So what we need to do as a community, just keep the conversation going. Now, if we're successful with the commission at getting them to vote to go ahead and change this name, we're fine with that, but we want them to keep the discussion. We'll be happy to be a part of the discussion. So we know about the contest that's going on. So if the contest determines they want 63rd Street, just please understand that it's not an alternative to our proposal. Our proposal is separate and distinct. So I had to make that quite clear in our room. Now, there will be some resistance if this happens. There will be resistance, okay? But the two men name that's gonna come off, William Volker and Thomas Swope, they currently have their names on many landmarks in Kansas City. Mr. Volker's name is on a beautiful fountain. His home is on the National Registry of Historic Places. Mr. Volker has a neighborhood of nearly 4,000 residents in his name. Mr. Volker has a neighborhood association in his name. And of course, the entire campus of the UMKC is named in his honor. Thomas Swope's name is also proudly displayed around Kansas. There is Swope Park, Swope Memorial Golf Course, Swope Pool, Swope Soccer Village, Swope Health System, which is a clinic, Swope Parkway that goes north and south, which will not be affected by this change. Only the east and west portion will. That's Swope Fountain, Swope Memorial. So unlike the name on the street formerly known as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, the Paseo, William Volker and Thomas Swope are names that at least symbolize something significant. So with that said, replacing these names would not cause these two men to go into oblivion, as I said in the last session. So, you know, our founder is a man of God, of deep spiritual faith. He's a civil rights champion. He has a national holiday in his name. And I talked to them about how that holiday came about. It wasn't a loud, aggressive, progressive liberal like me who signed that bill into law. It was Ronald Reagan, the prince of the angry white male, despiser of the poor, He created the fictitious welfare queen, Black welfare queen. This is the fictitious character that he created. But when it came down to signing that bill, he couldn't come up with a reason not to sign it. So on November 2nd, 1983, President Ronald Reagan, rest his soul, signed Dr. King's holiday into law. Why did he do that? Because it was a no-brainer. And so we implore the commission to go ahead and vote, and let's get this street done in our founder's honor for the same reason. It's a no-brainer. Come on, Kansas City. Let's show the rest of the nation and the rest of the world that we are that city we talk about. We're inclusive, we're progressive, and we accept everybody and their culture and their heroes as the same. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Woolfolk. I appreciate your passion and your comments. And thanks everybody in those groups as well. We have one more group left, Esther Swanson.
Yeah, I don't know how I follow that like that passion for honoring Dr. King. So apologies now, everyone. So we also had a pretty small group. You know, there's definitely the support for an east-west and kind of bridging those east-west boundaries that have been created in Kansas City, with a little bit of hesitation about taking off a boulevard name, not necessarily a person's name, but already a named boulevard. And there were some that felt maybe it was more appropriate to go with a numbered street such as 63rd. But one of the really the biggest takeaway, I think, from our group, and this has been echoed in other groups as well, is the importance of creating, wherever we put it, creating a very, like, an experience of a corridor that is a street that's not just Dr. King's name on it, but that includes interpretive signs or something to give an experience and the history of the Black legacy in Kansas City and in America. And so one of the suggestions that came up in our group was that, you know, if we move forward with this proposed location, really using MLK Square Park as this anchor for this corridor and finding ways to incorporate other, like, Black leaders or Black activists or civil rights leaders who have done so much for the community. And yes, Dr. King is the anchor, but how can we honor others as well who have continued that fight?
Thank you, Esther. Does anybody have anything else they want to add from their group? Anybody else have any comment they want to make or anything before we kind of wrap up and close out? See, Mark is off mute.
Yeah, let me kind of start my comments where I began at the beginning. Thank you, Roosevelt, for leading this effort, and thanks to the rest of the park staff for heading up these breakout sessions, and also President Holland, thanks for continuing this conversation. I think you're getting very, very close on this. As you know, I've got a lot of history with this, and I appreciate everybody's comments, Kevin especially. I know had conversations throughout the community on this for a long period of time, and I think you're spot on with a lot of your comments. And also, I think the report outs from Glenn and from Doug and of course from Julie and Kelly were very helpful. And I think this whole issue about the cultural corridor is important. And I don't think we want to go year by year and just think about Dr. King in a certain period of time when you think about year long and make it, you know, whether that's programs or whether that's lecture series or whether you name it. And I know, Glenn, you're aware of all that too. And as far as, you know, continue the legacy and continue to make sure that's known throughout our community. So I think you're on the right track. I think you've done a great job on this. And I believe you're really close to bringing this to where it needs to be. and to continue that ongoing message. I gave a few little sidebar comments to Esther. She'll share with you a little bit of the components that doesn't really change the direction you're going, but just some things kind of, check a couple boxes, you might say. But anyway, good job. And there again, I believe you're right on spot. And thanks for everybody for working on this. And I know the other important thing, as mentioned with the Bruce Watkins Cultural Heritage Center is important. I'm glad Gail's on here. She and I have been talking a lot lately too. And she's got some good leadership. And so you think back to what Bruce Watkins brought to this community years ago. You think about what Emmanuel Cleaver brought to this community years ago. You think about, and he's still doing it today, Ollie Gates is a person I've talked to on numerous occasions about this. And I think it's important that continue moving forward. So good work, folks.
Thanks, Mark. And thank you again, everybody, for taking this time out of your evening. You have a lot of things you got to do throughout the night. So I really appreciate everybody taking a couple hours just to hang out with us and give us your feedback on this. I do want to highlight what Kelly said about when we talk about these big issues. I think we are always going to be better off when we have neighbors talking to neighbors and residents talking to residents. That's the way these decisions should be made, as opposed to me or any of us public officials. So these are your assets, and I'm glad to see so many people are engaged and interested in this conversation. So as we wrap, I'll just wrap up with some next steps. We're going to kind of summarize all this information we got, give it to our board, and I'm sure they're going to be taking this up, taking up the current proposal to honor Dr. King within the next, this spring, I believe. So look for more information on that, and we'll make sure that we get an email out to everybody once that gets on the docket, so that if you want to, you can tune into that. There are lots of opportunities for you to participate with Parks and Recreation. We continue the conversation and engagement around MLK Square Park. There is going to be a larger kind of planning effort around that park now that we have kind of the Mahomes Foundation contributing, and also J.E. Dunn's volunteer to put a shelter in there. So we want to take a step back and kind of do some big picture planning for that park and do an update. So we'll have a lot of opportunity for people to give their feedback there. The Parks Department is responsible for the Commission on Monuments and Memorials, looking at taking a step back to some of the, in reference to some of the comments that are made, and some of the city's assets, memorials, monuments, streets that are named in honor of people who may or may not have participated in dehumanizing practices and kind of the solution for those. So lots of conversations to be had this year. I really hope everybody tunes in, stays plugged in, and contributes as we move forward on all these big, important topics. So, and if you are so moved that you want to help out at your local park or volunteer, please reach out to Kelly Jander. She runs our Parks Ambassadors program. We have lots of volunteers out there cleaning parks and taking ownership, and is doing some amazing work. So, if you're looking for a way to stay involved, that's also a good way. With that, I'm going to close this out. Again, thank you so much, everybody, for coming out tonight or staying in tonight, whatever the case may be. Hope you all have a good evening, and hope I talk to you soon.
Roosevelt?
Yes, sir.
Would you mind one quick summary remark? I was reviewing my notes from December when we had a very similar group of people. And the one thing that came up then that didn't seem to come up today is that whatever we do, this is not just a Kansas City thing. This is something that we can use as a destination for people coming to our city. So instead of just Me Too, I mean, many cities have boulevards and streets named in recognition, but if we do something a little different, a little bigger, and a little better, this could be a destination and put Kansas City a little more on the map.
That's very well said, and a good way to close this out. Hashtag a little bigger, a little better. Hashtag follow me. Just kidding. Everybody have a good night. Take it easy.
Thank you.